Hello everyone, it's Matsimus and thank you for joining me on today's video. Now, as most of you are quite aware, I really enjoy the Squad game. If you've never played before, you're missing out. There's one part of Squad though that I've been looking forward to for quite some time, and if you are an avid follower of Squad, you should know that in the near future there will be a British Army faction coming into the game. You're probably wondering, well Matsimus, why the hell would you enjoy the Squad units for British soldier side instead of any other faction? Well, obviously I was in the British Army, so I side a lot more towards, the British side of things. That being said though, I still love the game in its current format with its current units, both the American and Afghani and all the other Russian, Chechnyan, whatever else you want to call them units. It's just a fantastic game. Now, I'm not going to beat a dead horse here and tell you how great Squad is. If you're watching this video, I already presume you know how good it is. And I know a lot of you have been telling me to play Project Reality because it does have British units. Understandably, guys, I know that game is absolutely fantastic, but I'm more along the side of going with something new. I've never played the Project Reality game, so it's kind of redundant me getting into it, considering it is, at the end of the day, an older platform, although still has fantastic support from its creator base. I'd rather get on with a new game that's getting actively updated for a new, modern, I guess, generation of game, and Squad is definitely ticking that box. Now, one of the key reasons as to why I'm really excited for the British units coming into this game is realism, and how effective they're going to be at actually producing a British soldier in-game that is realistic looking, sounding, fighting, and just fun to play. Being as I was a British soldier, I'm going to be pretty skeptical for certain things they may put onto the units. I must admit, I'm a little nervous that they're not going to make it, totally accurate and there's going to be a little bit of cringe, but I don't think there's going to be. I think they're going to do an absolutely fantastic job, just like they have done with every other unit in Squad. There's going to be some key attributes that I'm looking for from the units, and I'm sure many other people will be too, but just recently I found out that Squad has actually just released an animation system update, which is kind of surprising to me because, I thought they'd actually just do these sort of things a little later on, but, it's nice that the creator base and the developers are actually keeping up to date and actively making new things happen, including the disintegrating belt, as you just saw there, and deployable bipods. This is a big one for them. I guess they're really happy with their deployable bipods set up here because it goes on to their featurette video for quite some time. But it's cool, we all love bipods, makes us aim better. Something I particularly don't care for because for the most part I tend to just run around like a complete lunatic, but still really, really interesting. The bipod is definitely going to improve your accuracy. It's also going to make you a bit of a target because to undeploy that bipod's going to take you a little bit of time, and to deploy it again is going to give you a bit of time too. But this isn't really what I'm focusing on today. It's more the British side of things. Now, a couple of things that I'm definitely going to be looking at for the British Army side of things when they bring it in is uniform. Uniform is key. If they're going to bring in a new unit and a new faction, it needs to relate quite heavily to what the British Army looks like today. Now, there are different variations of British soldiers out there. Obviously, there's the Special Forces side of things. There's the standard regular infantry, whether it be a standard infantry regiment or, airborne side. There's all different types of variants of uniform that the British Army is using right now. There's also a rather large transition right now that the British Army is going through in terms of their equipment. Both the Virtus system, Osprey, Kestrel is all going out of fashion now, I guess, and transitioning to a much more modern soldier utility system, which is really cool. And honestly, I'm extremely impressed that the British Army has finally decided to start looking into their personal kit and personal load carrying equipment correctly. That's inclusive of webbing, pouches, ammunition, medkits, all that good stuff. And I really hope that Squad hits it on the head with that, and I really do think they're going to. I'm sure they've done a lot of research, looked into it a lot to actually make sure that the units look fantastic. And here is one example of what the British units will look like. Now, really, guys, on a first impression, I think it looks fantastic. They've put a lot of attention to detail, as basically that is what Squad to me is all about. They've gone a lot to attention to detail, whether it be sounds, loading sequences, animation for movement, explosions, all that good stuff. It really is attention to detail, and a lot of people will say, well, yeah, so's Arma 3 and all that sort of stuff. It is, I'll agree with that, but when it comes to attention to detail, really the intricacies of a game, I think Squad really hits it on the head, and it's not as broad, obviously, as Arma 3 in terms of gameplay and abilities, but I think Squad's taken the right approach. Let's get the little things right first, and then expand onto bigger, and that's what they're doing. They're looking into more vehicles slowly but surely, bringing new stuff in at a time, and I actually really like that, because it gives you a bit of time yourself to get used to each unit before the next one comes out. And they're not charging you more for it, they're just bringing in upgrades. Anyway, I digress. So the British unit unit, first and foremost, looks really, really good. The helmet looks very, very key to any British soldier. It's, again, a very big transition between what kinds of helmets they wear. I myself absolutely despise the new British Army Scrim helmets. A lot of people love it, and I get why they've chosen Scrim. You know, the dangling down from the top of the helmet stuff. It's not a great look for me. I just think it looks annoying. I enjoy this kind of Scrim helmet where it's the, you know, the netting, the sniper netting over the top used by the airborne troops. Looks very, very nice. First thing I will disagree with, though, on this particular setup is really they've gone for the, you know, everything on the chest look. Now, again, I'm not in the British Army anymore, and I know doctrine and tactics have changed, as well as styles have changed in the British Army. But at the end of the day, this look, for me, doesn't seem extremely accurate. The footage I see of the British Army operating as an infantry standard nowadays doesn't have this chest rig style of equipment load. It's just not the way they really roll. I know there's specifics in different units that may roll that way, but from what I'm seeing as a majority aspect, as a standard infantry soldier, they're sticking towards the PLC, or personal load carrying equipment style of webbing, which is basically everything is loaded to the rear of the soldier, giving him the ability to crawl around on the floor and not interfere with his equipment on the front of him. That's not saying there isn't any equipment on the front of him. You know, these gentlemen that you see in this particular video are only wearing combat body armor, so, you know, they don't actually have their standard operating Virtus equipment on, or the chest rig kind of body armor that they would usually wear, because it's just a training scenario. However, they still utilize that PLCE webbing even with the Virtus system. So it's interesting to see that Squad has chosen this, you know, everything on the front of you look. And I personally, when I was in the British Army, hated it. It was great if you were in vehicles, because you could have, you know, a lot of room behind you to sit in the vehicle seat. It doesn't interfere with you, that, you know, those pouches, those 6 pouches, or however many pouches you load on the back here, interfering with you. But the game, I think, is more siding towards the American side of things. I don't think they've looked into it a little bit more in terms of a standard infantry soldier, what they would be wearing in the British Army. As you can see here, these gentlemen also have the sniper netting plus scrim netting, so it looks pretty neat. These guys don't have the over-the-top scrim, so I can kind of you know, relate to it, and I don't mind this kind of setup as scrim, but some of them have just, like, it looks like literally those huge dogs that have like sheepdog hair. It looks ridiculous dangling down from their helmets, and Squad hasn't gone that way, so hopefully they don't keep rolling down that way. But for personal equipment, guys, I would have liked to have seen the PLC setup, you know, this kind of rear pouch setup for the game. Maybe they'll adjust it so that only certain units will have that chest sort of rig set up and not the PLCE. Hopefully there'll be different variants of the soldiers that will have different setups of kit. I'm sure there will be, you know, we'll have Grenadier and Medic and, you know, Squad Leader and all that good stuff. Let's just hope, though, that the majority of the units use this load webbing that they have on right now, because it just seems more realistic. And, well, I mean, I'm a little biased because I really like the PLC webbing and that's what I used. And maybe some of you will disagree and say, actually, it looks a lot better and a lot more realistic in terms of today's military conflict with the British Army having the chest rig. But that's just my opinion. So that's the first thing I'm really hoping they get right, and hopefully they will when it comes to different units, but we will see. So again, here's another image of what the Squad units will look like for the British Army. It looks pretty realistic. Even the eye defense, you know, they've got the yellow haze there, which I don't think many people actually wear yet, of the changeable ESS eye safety wear, but it looks really, really neat. They put a lot of attention to detail in both the radio, even the rank slide, little pens and all the little you know, webbing straps there. It just looks really, really neat. I'm even enjoying the tight gaunch she's got going on there with the pants. It looks extremely uncomfortable, but it does look pretty badass, guys. I got to admit, even the Union Jack patch on the right there, the correct color, they wouldn't have this, you know, extremely large blue and bloody red and white patch on there. They've actually gone for the tactical looking patch. It looks really nice. And let's just hope that overall the movements and animation of this type of unit looks really good too. The scrim netting they've chosen this one, compared to the other picture I showed you, is again that horrible poodle type dog looking scrim that comes off the helmet. Not a big fan of it, but some of you really enjoy it, so maybe it'll appeal to you, but definitely not for me. So the next thing we'll talk about for these units is obviously weapons. Now, a lot of you are going to be extremely triggered, pardon the pun, for the L85A2 coming into the game. I know a lot of people absolutely despise this firearm. I have no clue as to why, and I got a little bit of a clue actually. It's because of the L85A1 history back in its day. Everybody determines this rifle to be absolutely terrible. It's not. I've used it. Even a lot of people who still use it today think it's terrible, and I won't argue with people on that. You know, everybody has their own personal preference. But to be honest, I'm just really glad that another game is coming into the market where the L85A2 is able to shine shine a little bit. Even if it is what people think is just a polished turd, it is still a weapon that is used by the British Army that is being showcased into a game that's for you know, a mass audience. And to me, I love it. I just love seeing this rifle come into you know, into the spotlight more. And I know a lot of big games and big developers use this gun for their games, but this one definitely brings the realism side into things, and I hope they get it right. Now, here's where things get a little bit complicated, because in Squad, sighting is very, very odd. You know, you get some rifles that will come with an ACOG, some rifles that will come with an aim point, some rifles that will come with iron sights. This is where things become, to me, a little triggering, because at the end of the day, you would not go into a combat situation with an iron sight on an L85A2. It just wouldn't happen, and if it does, you're in a support role and the shit has really hit the fan. That's where I hope they don't release this game update with this particular setup as iron sights, because it's just not going to make any sense. Now, currently the British Army is using the Elkin LDS, or Lightweight Day Sight. It's a close quarter battle sight at the top of the weapon system as well, to allow you to go through, you know, close encounter depending on the deployment or theatre that you've been sent into. And a lot of the regiments are now utilising this particular sighting system for their rifle. But this is where in Squad it gets a little complex, because in Squad, like I mentioned, there's a different variant of sight for each role that you pick. But in the British Army, we don't have, you know, a red dot scope for an L85A2. We don't have iron sights used in a combat role, extremely rarely anyway. We may have a couple of SUSATs left out there being utilised, but to be honest with you, it's just not a good sight anymore, and it's clearly outdated. So I'm curious as to what they're going to do with this, you know, whether it be they only have it for a couple of roles and the rest are given, I don't know, SUSATs, or if they're just given iron sights. I really hope they don't. I'm hoping that they just give all of the L85 roles this particular sight, and maybe, you know, different sights for other weapon platforms, which we'll talk about in a little while longer. But let's be honest here, if you're going to give British units into the game, let's try and keep it as realistic as possible. I know they need to keep the dynamic for gameplay, where they say, you know, well, we can't give everybody long-range optics because it's going to be unfair. I get that, but let's just try and stick to a minimum of at least 2 roles with this particular sight, because it's not going to make any sense giving iron sights and red dot scope sights on top of L85A2s. It's just not going to look good. But if, you know, you disagree, let me know in the comment section below. I will definitely love to hear your side of things, whether you think, you know, there should be some variations of sights on these rifles. But overall, I think that's something they're going to have to look into, and I'll be interested to see which sight they actually pick for the top of the rifles. All we know so far is that the L85A2, as per what they've given us as a bit of a snippet, is going to be iron sights for this rifle, which is, you know, still pretty cool. And the details of the rifle itself look very, very good, very crisp. The, you know, Daniel Defense handguard there, we're not stuck to the old plastic disgusting piece of garbage that the L85A1 used to have, and even the L85A2 in its early days. So that's good to see. No bipod though I see there, so I'm not too sure if they're maybe going to implement hand grips in the future to allow us to deploy the bipod that comes with the L85A2 hand grip, but we will see in the future. But this is the first rifle that I've seen on the British side that they're actually going to implement. The only other thing that I've seen that may be coming out in the future is the Javelin anti-tank guided missile. Now, I know this isn't just a British standard unit, it's used by the majority of the US military. However, it would be really cool to bring this in for both the British and US side, the Javelin, and maybe even some more modern anti-tank guided weapon systems for other factions such as the Conkers or the Faggot. Yes, I said it, the Faggot. You know, all the different modern anti-tank weapon systems that are out there. It'd be really cool to see them coming into place, and I'm sure they will in the future. Maybe they'll come out with the British side, I'm not sure. Some other weapon systems that the British side should definitely get, and some of you may disagree, is going to be the LSW. It's not really utilised much anymore, but it still exists and could be a really good role to have in the British side. You know, I was talking a lot about roles before and different platforms that they could bring in, and, you know, if they want to make it a little bit more diverse and a little bit more spread in terms of the different roles you can pick, the LSW would actually be quite a nice fit, because it's basically an L85A2 standard service rifle with a longer barrel, deployable bipod, which would go very well with their recent updates, and a rear hand grip and butt plate for support. So it has the exact same ammunition capacity as most of the other rifles. It's not the same as a support role like the LMG rifle that they would hopefully bring into the game also, but still something they could think about to try and make it a little bit more diverse for different roles in the game. The only other rifle that I can really see them hopefully bringing into the game is the Sharpshooter for the British Army. The L129A1 Sharpshooter Rifle is the British Army's designated marksmanship rifle, very similar to the designated marksmanship rifle that you get in the American side. Let's just hope that they'll actually put a bipod on that too to allow you to actually use this weapon system correctly in its role that it should be, being able to deploy and support your troops from long range. Not exactly a sniper rifle, as so to speak, more just an increased range support weapon to give your guys some cover as they move from building to building or from long distance cover. So hopefully they'll put that in place too. Again, here's one of the guys with the fancy scrim on there, so we'll see if they actually put that in place. I'm actually enjoying the fact that they've even put the gloves on the characters in-game, which is pretty cool to see. So speaking of the in-game roles, let's touch base on what we know so far and what people have released and kind of investigated and what I guess the developers have really shared with us in terms of the different equipment and roles that we're going to have in-game. Now, so far, this is what we know specifically for the kind of equipment and roles that they're going to have. Command and support, as usual, is going to be squad lead and medic, and they will have an L85A2 with 6 mags, a standard G17 handgun, some frag grenades, some field dressings, the usual kind of stuff. It doesn't specify on the kind of optics that these rifles are going to get. Let's hope they stick with the LDS sight. The Rifleman himself, again, will just be given the L85A2 standard with 6 mags. It would be nicer to see if the Rifleman could have some sort of AT specific to the British Army, whether it be an AT4 or even a Javelin potentially for fire support a little later on, but we'll get to that next. Fire support, the automatic rifleman will get the L110A2, which is basically the LMG, or what many of you know as the Millimie machine gun, which is a 5.56mm belt-fed machine gun. Again, who knows what sight or optics they're going to put on that, but we will see. There will be a light anti-tank roll. We're not too sure what they're going to put on the light anti-tank roll. Probably some sort of, law, end law may be placed in there. Could be interesting to see. A Grenadier L85A2 along with the underslung grenade launcher. Let's hope they put that in place. A beautiful bit of kit which is really fun to use actually if you've ever used it before. A lot of fun to use. And in the British Army they have their underslung grenade launcher set for the L85A2, so let's hope they put that in place. And as I did mention before, the marksman should be in there with the L129A1 with optics and 6 magazines, along with the standard sidearm service package for most soldiers in the game. We do not know what kind of emplacements they will get. Let's presume that we're going to go on the basis of a NATO standard, so the 50 caliber machine gun. Transport and logistics, I'm sure they'll look at in the future. Let's just start off with the Billy basics of the units themselves. The most important thing for me out of all the units in game, guys, is going to be what they're going to use for optics. I have said this before with the red dot and all that sort of stuff. I just want to see what they're going to standardize and how they're going to give that little, pinch of dynamic, and how they're going to make the gameplay change a little bit with different variations of optics. Or, the LSW maybe being snuck in there would be really interesting to see. The Grenadier is going to be interesting also with the underslung grenade launcher. Let's see if that turns out to be a really, really good representation of the British Army's version of the underslung grenade launcher. We will see. But overall, guys, it looks really interesting, and I hope it's going to come out in the near future. There really isn't much information that I have found that shows when it's going to be released, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. But guys, let me know in the comment section below what you think of this update. Are you excited for it? Do you really not care and you're just enjoying the current units that are out there? What are kind of expectations and things that you think are going to come out for this particular update? And let me know if you think this video is any good today, guys. Also, leave me a like. I'd love to hear your opinions on it. And let's look forward, I guess, to this new and upcoming update for the future. Thanks again for watching, guys. If you do wish to support my channel, please feel free to go check out my Patreon account. It is in the description box below. And if you are new to my channel, please subscribe. Thanks again for watching. All the best, and bye-bye.